Brutal business truth number 1. Sell to rich people until you have the money to sell all the poor people. The middle is where you get killed. Elon said, you can either do a lot of good for a small amount of people or a little good for a large amount of people. And I will tell you personally, it's way harder to do a little good for a lot of people than a lot of good for a small amount of people. There is a reason that Tesla started at the top. They started only selling to rich people. They had the Roadster, which is $250,000. And so they sold those, and then he was able to go down market one and sell $100,000 cars to just upper echelon of society, the wealthy. And then after that, he made the X, which is a little bit cheaper than that. And then underneath of that, he made the Model 3, which was going to be the mass model, right? And each time, it was significantly harder to do the one before, because if you want to sell based on value in terms of low cost, you need to build the infrastructure for huge amounts of demand, because the only way that you make money selling to poor people is selling tons and tons and tons of them. Look at Walmart, look at Amazon. These are businesses that were built for volume day one, and they win on efficiency. That was the whole point. Amazon, he wanted to have the best selection and the lowest prices. Walmart, everyday low prices. They win on efficiencies. Like, they all fly coach. They use fold-out chairs. They drink out of paper cups. They purposely breed the culture of efficiency because it's the only way that you can win if you sell to poor people. And I say poor people to be hyperbolic in terms of my language so that it drives the point home. Obviously, I buy from Amazon. But the point is that the strategy is based on volume.
So when I started my first ever business, it was a online personal training business. This is 13 plus years ago. And when I started, I didn't know anything, and I was so afraid to charge people money to begin with. And so, but I did want them to pay something because I wanted them to be invested, because otherwise people don't follow through with their workouts or their nutrition plans, et cetera. And so I said, hey, just donate to the charity of your choice, whatever charity you want to. In exchange, I will then train you for 12 weeks. And so people would donate, I think it was $500 or $1,000, it was their choice, to a charity of their selection. And by doing that, I actually got my first 13 or so customers just by making posts and DMing people that I knew. And it didn't feel weird, because I was like, hey, I'm doing this kind of nonprofit thing. I want to help you out if you want to lose weight, and you can feel good about it, and it's a write-off. And so we were like, oh, this is pretty cool. But the thing is like, that was the first time I ever did it. And then from there, I said, would you guys be willing to pay me now after we finish this 12 weeks? And a lot of them were like, sure. I was like, yeah, I'm the charity now. And so after I did a good job, they were willing to do that and refer me customers. The next business that I did this with was Gym Launch, when I actually started flying out to other gyms. So I used to do turnarounds, and I did that for 2+ years. So I'd fly out to a gym, set up all the pricing, do the marketing, all that stuff, and I did it all for free. And I did it that way because I didn't know how I could sell those gym owners. And the deal that I made was, I only make money if I make sales, and I'll front the cash for the marketing. So like, they took zero risk on, and I would do everything, including pay for my hotel, my flights, my food, my rental car, everything. But being able to do that, it allowed me to get way more yeses quickly, test out the system in 30+ markets that I had, which then eventually led me to licensing that system to 5,000+ locations. And that was the company that I sold to APG. Number 1, have something extremely expensive to sell that you never even plan on selling. I learned about this anchoring tactic from a friend of mine. And he said, listen, man, you can just put something on your menu of items or services that you sell that's 10 or 100 times more expensive. And just by having it there, it'll anchor everything else on your menu or the rest of the prices that you have. And just make it something that if someone actually bought it, you'd be stoked that they did. But what ends up happening is that, 1, you'll sell more people on your core offer because they have this big price anchor. Second, it allows you to nudge up your main offer's price because related to the big one, it looks like almost nothing. I was talking to a different friend of mine, and I said, hey, you should consider just adding one of these things in. And he had a weight loss business, a very generic online weight loss business. And so he added a 6 times higher price version of his offer. And then the craziest thing happened. People started buying that more than his core offer. And when he did that, he tripled his profit overnight. And so the thing is that it also breaks you, especially if you're starting in business, out of this fear of raising prices by just saying, hey, there's no way anyone's gonna buy this. I'm gonna make this so expensive, no one's gonna buy it, and that's okay. So you give yourself permission to just fly it out there. But what you will find is that 10% of customers just wanna buy the most expensive thing. These are the whales. And the only thing worse than making a $1,000 offer to somebody with a $100 budget is making a $100 offer to someone with a $1,000 budget. Because in the first scenario, you lose $100. In the second scenario, you lose $900. of the money that you should have made. I paid someone who had made a lot more content, had a much bigger brand, and I said, hey, what should I be doing? What should I do to make my content better? And he's like, dude, you don't need to make your content better. He was like, you're just not making anything. And so what he did was he pulled up his profile on LinkedIn and he pulled up my profile on LinkedIn. And he was like, I posted 5 times a day. You haven't even posted. And then he pulled up Instagram and he pulled up my Instagram and he's like, I posted 2 times a day. You posted once a week. I was like, man. He's like, okay, let's pull up YouTube and then my YouTube. And he just went platform by platform and he showed that he was doing 3x, 5x, 10x the volume that I was. And he was like, dude, you just got to do more. And that was this I felt embarrassed because I just paid all this money to have someone just look at me and just say, do more. But hopefully I can save you the money and just tell you, you probably need to do more. And the interesting thing about this is that I later on had, at the point now when we had maybe a year ago, I had 5-ish million subscribers across all platforms. I had a friend of mine who's a billionaire who wanted to start getting into personal branding. And he said, hey man, can you check out my Instagram and see what's going on and why we're not growing as fast as I want to? And so I said, well, before I look at it, I was like, how many posts a week are you making across all platforms? He's like, oh, got that nailed. He's like, I'm posting once a day. And I was like, dude, we post 50 plus times a day. And he was like, got it. He just was like, you don't need to say anymore. I understand. Because he had enough experience in other realms to know that all of the things in volume that work in sales, that work in customer success, that work in product in terms of iterations, the same concepts apply to advertising and marketing. You just need to do a lot in order to figure out what works so that you can do better later.